series here at Bowman Library, the whole new teen book spotlight. So for this week, our theme is we are going to be using some inspiration from some things that maybe, were shared in the past. And what I mean by that is we are using mythology as our inspiration this week. We are taking a look at books that are inspired by different mythologies. We have some titles that incorporate Greek mythology. We have others that incorporate some East Asian mythologies. And yeah, I love this theme. One of my favorite books of all last year is in this stack. I cannot wait to share these 6 books with you. So let's get started. Our first one is A Lovely War. This is by Julie Berry. So this combines Greek mythology and history because it has a little bit of everything. Because the story starts on Earth. Like, we are on Earth. It's the beginning of World War II. And we start by finding Hephaestus, who goes into this hotel, and he finds his wife, Aphrodite, in a compromising position with Ares in a hotel room. In order to avoid judgment by Mount Olympus, Aphrodite then offers to tell a story. And this story is all about how love can conquer all, including war and death. And then she starts to go back in time in her story, and she starts to bring Hephaestus and Ares along with her. And through this story, we go back to this epic romantic tale of these 2 couples that find war during World War I against all odds. And the couples, there's Hazel and James, and then there's Colette and Aubrey, and they each have their own stories, their journeys, trials and tribulations, which would try to keep them apart, but they will do whatever they need in order to defy the odds. This is filled with, and there's such incredible attention to detail, not only in terms of the mythology aspect, but also the historical fiction side. And you will find yourself enraptured with this story that has romance, history, there's mystery, there's drama, and the Greek mythology aspect doesn't hurt either. This is Lovely War. Our next one is Bull by David Elliott. So this amazing novel in verse is for all you Greek mythology lovers out there, because what this one does, it's the retelling of the Greek myth of the Minotaur and Theseus. Now, you know the Minotaur is the bull that is trapped in the labyrinth, that underground maze that King Midas has built. And it is told through all the points of view of the characters involved, but there's this new epic modern twist and take. And it's this modern interpretation of that myth. There's sarcasm, there's dark humor, there's slang, there is some violence, and there's even a bit of language, but you will find yourself loving Greek mythology once again if you've kind of fallen in love out of it, or you're going to find yourself enraptured in this new take on this classic myth. I really enjoyed this one. It's a fast read. It's a novel in verse, but it has everything you need to enjoy. You might even find yourself then going back to the original source material. This is Bull. Forest of 1,000 Lanterns. Okay, so Zai Feng is 18 years old. She is destined to become the empress of a kingdom called Fenglu. But no one else knows that, because she grows up in this poor village where manual labor and starvation is the norm, and it is a card reading that her wicked aunt does one day. That when she was younger, this card reading gave her this prediction that Zai Feng is going to be this empress based on this card reading. And Zai Feng has held on to that ever since. It's the only thing that she has that has gotten her through. It's encouraged her to keep pressing on through these horrible conditions. And then armed with this prophecy, when she's 18, she decides she's going to go to the capital city. So she makes her way there, and she soon finds that she gets into the palace, and she soon finds that the life in this palace is not any easier than it was at our village. If anything, it comes with its own set of struggles and challenges and problems that she faces both inward and outwardly. And yeah, it's the first in a trilogy. It's inspired by Asian mythology and folklore. And I will warn you, this one is not for the faint of heart. It has a gorgeous cover. It is not for the faint of heart. There's some pretty gory descriptions. There's some pretty bloody scenes and events. But you will not be able to put this one down. It's, again, the first in a trilogy. You will want to know how everything's going to play out. This is Forest of 1,000 Lanterns. Okay, something a little bit different. We are featuring an ebook this week. And here's why. This is one of my favorite books that I read last year, okay? You can get this as an ebook off of Libby. I think it's also on Hoopla, but I'm gonna have to control myself on this one. I will tell you that. So I want you to think about this one as Greek mythology meets the Hunger Games. Now, 1,500 years before our story starts, 9 Greek gods and goddesses, they end up defying Zeus. They gang up together. They're gonna defeat him. Doesn't happen. And because of what they did, Zeus then creates this punishment that's known as the Aegon. And what that means is every 7 years, there's this cycle. And the gods and goddesses are stripped of their immortality for 1 week, and they're placed on Earth, and then whoever kills them in this week, that person then gets their powers and their immortality for the next 7 years. Now, fast forward to present day New York City, and there are these different houses, and they are these families that are in the lines of different Greek heroes, and they each have their own agendas. And then we meet Melora Perseus. She goes by the name Lore, and she's the last in her line. Now, after the brutal murder of her parents and sisters during the last Aegon, she's determined to stay out of it this time. She wants nothing to do with it. And one evening, she gets home, she's walking up to her doorstep, and there's this wounded person there. And it's not just any person, it's Athena. And when Athena makes this deal with her that is too irresistible for Lore to resist, she soon finds herself then sucked back into the Aegon more than she could ever imagine. And the next week is going to change her life and everything she thinks and knows. This book is non-stop. There's action, there's adventure, there's mystery, there's drama, there's twists and turns. I will tell you this, there were things that happened that I did not see coming. I loved this book. If you love Greek mythology, if you don't love Greek mythology, I encourage you to read it. It is a standalone. There's a beginning, middle, and end. I will tell you, it does start maybe a little slow. Stick with it. One of the best books I read last year. Cannot encourage you to read this one enough. This is Lore. Summer of the Mariposas. Okay, so once per day, the 5 Garcia sisters, they decide to go swimming in the Rio Grande River, and it is there that they stumble upon this body of a man who is drowned. They decide they're going to do the right thing, even though it's not going to be easy, and they want to return his body back to his family in Mexico. It is then that they set off on a journey that any of them, they couldn't have imagined. And it's led by both forces of good and evil. They encounter many trials and stumbling blocks, and along the way, they also meet these spirits. They each have their own agendas. Now, this journey is not only about trying to return this man back to his family, but it's also about coming to terms about their own family, and as well as the true meaning of their relationships with one another and with others outside of their family. Now, this Mexican-American and Aztec mythology-inspired story is a little bit of the story of the Odyssey, the epic poem by Homer. That's mixed in here as well, but it's one that anyone can relate to, even though it's filled with some epic magical realism. This is Summer of the Mariposas. Our last one is Evermeath. Okay, so Nikki's having a really hard time. She's super depressed from the death of her mother. Plus, then there's this epic betrayal of her boyfriend. And then she's presented with this opportunity to go to the underworld. And she decides to take it because it's there that she thinks she's going to be able to avoid this pain she's feeling. It is then that she's in the underworld that she meets Cole, who is the ruler of the underworld. And Cole discovers that Nikki's different from everyone else who's gone down there. And that's because she still has her memories, and she wants to return to Earth. Usually the people that are down there, they're called forfeits. They don't have that. So then Cole makes a deal with her. She can go back above ground for 6 months. And then she has to make a choice. Either she wants to stay up there or she's going to come back down to the underworld. And whatever choice she makes, that's her final decision. But if she goes back to the underworld, then she gets to become queen of the underworld. That's the deal he makes with her. Now, the decision's going to be harder than she ever thought, and there's many forces pulling her at her, and each one has their own agenda. Now, the spin on Persephone, the Persephone myth, is the first in a trilogy, and will leave you turning the pages as fast as you can, because you'll be trying to figure out along with Nikki what decision she's going to make, because she's going to be figuring out at the same time you are reading it. This is Evermeath. So these are just 6 of the books we have here at the library. They're inspired by mythology. And again, there's so many good titles. So we encourage you to come on out, check out one of these, or there are tons of others, and we can help you find whatever that perfect mythology-inspired book is that you're looking for. So I hope you come on in, and I hope you tune back next week when we have a whole new teen book spotlight with a different theme. And I hope you have an amazing week.